Welcome to our new IESE Economics series on LinkedIn Live. I'm Javier Diaz-Gimenez, and I'm happy to kick off this series in which economics professors from IESE will be discussing the most important issues faced by economies around the world. Understanding this changing economic scenario today is more important than ever in a context of high inflation, rising interest rates, and a rocky recovery, to paraphrase the title of the IMF 2023 edition of the World Economic Outlook. In today's session, I will be discussing the pension crisis that many countries are facing. Humans are having fewer children, they're living longer than ever before, but we still want to work the same number of years and we want to receive the same pensions. Baby boomers are moving into retirement after having accumulated more pension rights than any other generation, and their life expectancy in retirement is higher than ever. This is putting pension systems, and especially pay-as-you-go pension systems around the world, under great financial stress. Will they succeed in adapting to the new demographic circumstances? That is the question that we will try to answer today. Remember that you can write your questions in the chat and that I will try to answer them at the end. The first graph I want to bring to your attention is taken from a manuscript by Nicholas Barr, a famous world expert in pensions. This graph shows how the durations of education, working life, and retirement have changed around, in the UK from 1950 to 2004. In 1950, when my grandfather retired, he has spent, males in the UK had spent about 14 years in education. Their working lives had lasted for about 53 years, and then their expected duration of retirement was only 10.8 years. When you divide the number of years of your working life, which is the period of time during which you are making contributions, by the number of years of your retirement, which is the duration of the time in which you are collecting pensions, in 1950, you got a number of 5. You had been working for 5 years for each year you would spend on average in retirement. And of course, that allowed for a lot of contributions, relative to the pensions that you were going to collect when eventually you retired. If you move the timeline forward to 2004, when say my father retired, the duration of education had increased a little bit by about two years. The working lives have become slightly shorter, about 6 years shorter than my parents' working life on average than my grandparents' working life. But the biggest change had happened in the duration of retirement. Retirement in 2004, the average duration of retirement in the United Kingdom in 2004 was 20 years, twice as much as it was, 50 years earlier. When you divide now in 2004 the average duration of the working life by the average duration of retirement, you just get 2.4. And 2.4 is less than half of the five years per every year of pensionable retirement that took place in 1950. Now this number shrinks to 2.4. So in 2004, in the United Kingdom, people on average had been working 2.4 years for every year they spent in retirement. And this is not only a problem for the United Kingdom. This problem affects economies all across, essentially all across the world, because basically the biggest demographic change that has happened is that longevity of humans has increased, by a lot in the last 60 years. So in this second graph that we're going to show you, you can update these numbers, and we are going to see average durations of working lives and of retirement and the ratios in different countries across Europe. And if you look first at the first panel, at the red graph, you see average duration for males in Belgium that run at 35.7 years of average duration of a working life, all the way to Iceland and the Netherlands 44 and Iceland 46. But when you compare these numbers with the average duration of retirement, which you can see in the second panel, in the black graph, you see that in Luxembourg, on average, people spend 24 years in retirement. And if you look for the number of Luxembourg on the red panel, 36.4. So you divide the two and you get 1.52, as you can see in the third panel of this graph, in the blue lines, the blue bars, 1.52. That means that the people on average, you know, they spend not quite as much of, you know, 50% of the time, but 1/3, you know, roughly for every 2 years that they spend on retirement, they spend one in 2/3 for every year they spend in the working life, 2/3 of that amount they spend retired. If you go all over across those countries, you can see that these numbers. Remember that in the UK in 2004 the number was 2.5. Now in the best countries, Latvia and Iceland in Europe and the Nordics, and they're just above 2. So that number has shrunk even further. And the worst countries, you know, Belgium and France and Greece and Luxembourg, the number is around 1.5. So of course, this tells you that sustaining pension systems in this new demographic scenario is very expensive across the world, in all countries across the world. And with these kind of numbers, clearly there's only 3 things that you can do. Either you increase the contributions, but you know, if you want to go from 2.4 to 5, as was the case in the UK, you have to double the contributions that you make during your lifetime. Another solution is you have to reduce pensions, given that you're going to spend, you know, so much more time in retirement than you did in the past. Then pensions have to be less generous relative to wages, and people have to learn to be more frugal during retirement. The last option is to delay retirement ages. Again, to recover this number of 5 in the UK in the previous graph, you had to delay retirement to around 72 or 75 years of age in most countries. And of course, we have seen with the protest, with the you know, the social unrest created by this attempt in France to delay retirement from 62 to 64. So it's, you know, it's way less than you need to recover the sustainability of pension systems, because remember, pensions are nothing more than deferred wages. These are wages that, regardless of whether we organize them in pay-as-you-go systems or in funded systems, pensions are nothing other than wages which we pay to ourselves, which, you know, during our working lives while we are young, and beautiful, we pay to ourselves when we get old and ugly, you know? And therefore you have to keep in line either the amount of the contributions or the durations of the working lives and of retirement. So, you know, the technical solutions for these sustainability problems are relatively easy. Some combination of increased contributions, reduced pensions, and delayed retirement will do the trick, but politically it's very hard. Those reforms are really hard to implement, especially in the context of societies that are aging very quickly. And in many European countries, the age of the median voter is over 50. That means that there's more voters that are 50 years and older than between 18, which is the usual voting age, and 49. Therefore, you get a democratic capture of pension systems, and pension systems become very hard, if not impossible, to reform. From a technical point of view, you know, assuming that we solve this political capture of most European societies, from a technical point of view, the best way to organize pensions is basically to use 3 principles. The first principle is we should have universal pension systems. Pay-as-you-go, you know, the pension systems should be, you know, the pay-as-you-go part of pension systems should be universal. Everybody should be contributing with the same set of rules, regardless of the type of job they're doing, regardless of their personal circumstances, so that you get support for these systems. They become transparent and they become credible. So, and the second thing is the best pension systems, they are always mixed pension systems. They always combine a pay-as-you-go element, which is fundamental if you want to have solidarity in pensions. Pay-as-you-go pension systems have all the advantages and all the disadvantages of solidarity with funded systems. Funded systems, they have all the advantages and all the disadvantages of the lack of solidarity. But the incentives to contribute to the second pillar of pension systems, which is this funded part, are very strong because it's your contributions. You make the decisions. Your estate inherits them if you don't make it to retirement age. And there's very little interference with the state. But on the other hand, you need pay-as-you-go pension systems to allow you for annuities, which means a life insurance for longevity. In the funded part, you can always outlive your savings. You can get to be exceptionally live for exceptionally long lives and therefore outlive your savings. This does not happen in pay-as-you-go pension systems because they pay an annuity. They are a form of life insurance. The longevity risk is passed on from the retirees to the workers. Funded systems, on the other hand, they allow for geographical, allocation of assets. They allow for local risk hedging, and while pay-as-you-go systems are fully invested locally. And if the demographic and economic circumstances of the local economy are buoyant, then the pension system will be fine, and if not, the pension system will be in trouble. So you need universal pension systems. The same rule for everyone, mixed pension systems that combine a pay-as-you-go component with a funded component. And if possible, the pay-as-you-go part of pension systems should be organized along notional accounts. What are notional accounts? Well, notional accounts is just a way to account for pensionable rights. Basically, it's an account which is not invested anywhere. It's just an accounting procedure where workers know all the exact amount that they have contributed during their entire working lives. Every year, the bottom line of this account is updated. It's updated with the contributions that any given worker has made during that entire year, and it's also updated with any inheritance, because of course in a pay-as-you-go pension system, the survivors inherit the pensionable rights of everybody else, the people that die, that don't make it into retirement, and in these notional accounts allow to make these inheritances explicit, and they are increased every year by those amounts. They also allow for sustainability factors. They allow for, you can multiply the bottom lines of these accounts by factors that can be bigger than one if demographic and economic circumstances allow for that, or smaller than one if demographic or economic consequences require that you restore the sustainability of the system by reducing pensionable rights and preserving pensions. That's what makes the old, support this type of system. In terms, you can guarantee the old that they're going to keep having their own pensions and transfer the survival risk to the young. Sweden has them. Italy is about to enforce them, and other countries are considering this. Adopting these systems. These notional accounts also have the great advantage that not only they are transparent, not only everybody knows exactly how much they have contributed and can start to use that number to imagine what their pension is going to be, but they allow for maximum flexibility in retirement. They allow for people to retire whenever they want. They allow for partial retirement. They're fully compatible with wages. They allow for reversible retirement. You can move into retirement and move back because you keep contributing. Your account keeps increasing. And when you're collecting a pension, your account goes down. And of course, the sustainability factors make this indefinitely sustainable. So that would take care of the pay-as-you-go part. Other countries like Spain refuse to consider this, or have been refusing to consider this for the time being. But hey, we're working hard, and maybe who knows? After they watch this video, perhaps the politicians will take good note and will maybe start thinking that we could improve our pensions. This is pretty much it. If there are more details, of course, and then there's if you want to ask questions, now is the time. And we were going to try to be prompt and keep and stay on schedule. So this little talks will last for about 20 minutes, and then we are hoping to leave the other 10 minutes for questions, and we'll do it like that today and see how it goes on as we move into the future. So, okay, so the first question is, given that we probably need to work longer, how can a 4-day work week affect pensions? Well, yeah, we're going to live longer, and I guess if you organize a pay-as-you-go pensions or funded pensions with notional accounts, or with funded pensions with regular funded accounts, for shorter work weeks are perfectly compatible with generous pensions under one condition. You need to work for longer years. So probably, with technology, creating algorithms and machines that are going to participate more and more in creating value, what we're going to see is that the working lives of humans can be extended. So we're going to work more years in our lives, but shorter work weeks. And 4-year work weeks are a way to organize this. Of course, 4-year work weeks should not be mandated. They should be voluntary. They should be arrangements which employers and employees reach on their own without heavy-handed regulation that enforces this. The French tried it. It did not work, the 35-hour week. And on the other hand, in the Netherlands, we have more than 50% of their working force works less than 40 hours per week, so they are already on a shortened work week duration. And yeah, as long as we stay healthy, as long as we can extend our working lives, perhaps working shorter weeks, that's perfectly feasible. The second question is there any country where pensions are working better? Is there an example we can learn from? Well, whenever I go to conferences where we discuss pensions, there's always a fight in Europe. There's always a fight between the Netherlands and Sweden, and the Swedish pension expert and the Dutch pension expert. They try to compete with each other and show who has the best pensions. Both are admirable pension systems. Both satisfy the 3 principles I have been discussing. They have universal pensions, they have mixed pension systems that complement a pay-as-you-go part or pillar with a mandatory or quasi-mandatory and very used, funded pillar with assets over 100% of GDP. They have pension, the total income for retirees is very high in both systems, and they are slightly different in that the Netherlands places special emphasis on the funded part and with very generous and very efficient employment plans, whereas the Swedish system has something I particularly like. They have a pay-as-you-go system, but they also have that gives you a basic pension, but they also have a premium pension, which is an individual collection of individual pension plans that are administered by the Swedish pension system, but are managed by a huge universe of 800 private pension plans with really reduced, about 0.35% commissions. And every worker in Sweden, in a sense, is a capitalist because they all have mandatory, they use 0.65% of their contributions to fund mandatory individual pension plans. That's of course, a great idea. Every time I talk to a politician in Spain, I try to suggest that we could organize something like that. But as I said, I told you before, we're still a long way to getting there. The third question is what type of financial education on pensions for the, I need a little bit more data. Give me prompt. What type of financial education on pensions for the population could be helpful in this matter? Yeah, I mean, financial education really should be mandatory. I mean, you see, pensions cannot fix labor market problems because they inherit them. And labor markets cannot fix education problems because they inherit them. So if you want to reform, you have to start with education. If you want people to understand pensions, if you want people to contribute to pension systems, they need the financial education. They have to be convinced that they're, if they smooth their income across their lifetime, which is what pension systems help you to do, they will end up living better lifetimes, no matter how little or how much or how little your income is. And the sooner you start with this, the better, because you will get the magic of compound interest multiplying by a large multiple your savings. Could a 401k system solve some of the problem? Yeah, definitely. I mean, the 401ks, and any other mandatory savings plans, which is essentially either mandatory or incentivized with fiscal incentive savings plans. I think, in my opinion, mandatory savings plans are better because they otherwise, the temptation of undersaving is hard to resist. Our preference for the present makes us myopic, and there is pensions like in the number of children that you decide to have in your 30s. They create a substantial time inconsistency problem. When you are old, you wish you had more children because grandparents love their grandkids, and if you want to have lots of grandchildren, you need to have lots of children, and when you realize this, it's too late. So the same thing happens with savings for retirement. When you are a retiree, you look back on your lives and as a worker and you think, why didn't I save a little bit more? I would have had, and now I would be living a better life in retirement. But then it is too late. So that's why I think that to solve this time inconsistency problem, the state should be part of the solution and should mandate savings for retirement in a soft-handed, allowing for different, of course, for different risk propensities and risk profiles and for different types of jobs and so on. So not a heavy-handed, strictly mandatory, but at least quasi-mandatory plans seem to have been working very well wherever they have been organized. Should companies introduce supplementary pension programs for their employees? Definitely. That's whether you're going to organize the funded part in countries where you have a substantial pay-as-you-go system. Complementary parts should be part of the collective bargaining agreements, because in that way you can take care of the special needs of certain groups of workers. These workers that are doing hard and physically demanding jobs, and therefore all that should be taken care of outside the pension system, so you can have truly universal pension systems and at the same time increase income during retirement. Marcos tells us that we need to address that in the near future, delaying actions will only turn the problem bigger and bigger. Do you agree? Sure. I mean, the pension problem under the current demographic scenario and the foreseeable demographic scenario of increased longevity and reduced fertility are only going to get bigger and bigger. In the 1980s, there was some discussion in Spain when Chile started its funded pension system. There was some discussion in Spain whether we should reform our pension system and from this unique, extremely concentrated pensions in Spain are almost entirely concentrated on a pay-as-you-go system. In the 1980s, we had José Piñera coming to Spain and trying to convince Spaniards that they should reform their pay-as-you-go system and supplement it with a funded part. And of course, we didn't pay any attention. And of course, now 45 years down the line, 43 years down the line, it's much more expensive because the demographic scenario has changed dramatically, and the pension debt, the pension system deficits and the pension system debts have skyrocketed and have snowballed. And of course, in this, like in many other things, it is always late. The sooner we start with the reforms, the better. In Spain, Frederick tells us in Spain, with pensions costing 40% of total consolidated budgets and inverted population pyramids, well, they're not, okay, fine. Spain, like many other countries, its demographics, what we're doing is we're digesting baby boomers, okay? We're still, it's still looking like baby boomers are still, we still have about 5 to 10, 15 more years to go, okay? But yeah, pensions are going to be an increasing share of GDP, an increasing share of public sector budgets. But remember, I mentioned it before, pension systems in European countries, because of these demographics, have been captured by the elderly, have been captured by the median voter in many European countries is over 50 years old. And 50 years is when you start really thinking about, what my pension is going to be. So sure, basically, what the answer to your question is yes. The equation is not impossible, but European countries are not going to be, pleasant places for young people. They're going to be. We're transforming them slowly into countries for old men. Do I have one more? Yes. One more? Okay. Okay. No, not that one. Okay. Here. Where is the accountability of the economists and economic and policy makers? Initially calculated the pension. Did they make a terrible job? No, they didn't. No, they didn't, because they were working in a very, very different demographic situation. Pensions were calculated. If you go back to the Nick Barr graph, where you see this number 5. Average duration of the working lives 5 times as long as average duration of retirement. Pensions were perfectly calculated for that demographics. And what happened is that essentially, what was the problem? The problem is that life expectancy increased. It doubled life expectancy at retirement from 10 to 20 years. But retirement ages did not change. And we are still fixed. Look at the French. They think 62. They think they are entitled to retire at 62, when many of them are perfectly healthy for 10 years, where they could be working, paying payroll taxes, and deferring, their pension level lifetimes. So they did not do it. I mean, if they did a terrible job, was not in calculating pensions, but in imagining the future, in imagining what circumstances might be, in not designing pension systems like the notional accounts I have proposed here, that are flexible enough to integrate demographic and economic changes. And you cannot do it with a standard defined benefit pension systems, which pay-as-you-go pension systems, which are the classic ones. So I think that's it. We don't want to overrun. So let me just remind you that first of all, thank you for joining us in this first live session LinkedIn Live session of IESE Economics. Remember that we're going to try to do this on a monthly schedule. The next one will feature our great another professor of the department, our star, and Nuria Mas, and she will be discussing another topic. We'll see how it goes as time, and we'll hope that you'll be there. Stay tuned to this channel. Thank you very much, and see you soon. And by the way, save more for retirement. Start now.